Chapter 1044 is still, and probably might forever will be, rent-free, man. And one of the main topics of discussion coming out of this chapter, of course, is the legendary and incredible Gear 5th transformation, and specifically the line that led into it, the line that I think I'll never forget when I first saw it. I don't think you'll ever forget when you first saw it, when he said, "This is my peak. This is the pinnacle of what I can do. This is Gear 5th." And what I find so interesting about that is the topic of conversation that comes from that line, which is this Luffy's final form? We are heading into the end of the series. Wano is probably the last arc before we head into the final stretch, or at least one of the last arcs, before we head into the final couple of arcs within a major final saga. We still don't know that, of course. My assumption is, when I saw this chapter, it felt even more than the bounty reveals with Roger and Whitebeard, or even more when Luffy was declared the 5th Emperor. This, to me, was the closest indication we've ever gotten. Even more than Conqueror's coding. Gear 5th? This, to me, meant the series is coming to a close soon. We are in the end game. We are entering the end game of One Piece. And with that being said, I think it's a good time to have this discussion of whether or not this is Luffy's final form. Now, I do think Gear 5th is the last gear. I do believe that to be the case because this is the perfect representation of Luffy as a character, of the theme of freedom, and how Luffy represents that theme, not only now through himself as an individual, but now through his abilities as well. I think in that way, it is the perfect final form. And it goes back to the beginning of the series with how silly yet epic his abilities are, and how he always utilizes imagination around him to fuel the way that he did his abilities. We saw that with the Gomu Gomu no pistol, creating that to have a punch that's as strong as the pistol that Shanks and Lucky Roo and the squad would have in their arsenal. We saw the pinwheel that he utilized after being inspired by it. Of course, being inspired with Rob Lucci and the CP9 stuff to create Gear 2nd. The whole Sodu thing. Luffy sees things and he applies it in his own manner. Gear 4th, battling with those big monsters on Huskaina. We know for a fact that he's heavily inspired by the things that he fights against and or sees and finds interesting. So now with Gear 5th, we're taking that to the next level, to now where now he has the freedom not just to do that himself, but to the environment around him as well. So now we can have complete fun, complete freedom within battle. And I love it so much as it being my favorite theme in the story. And I think in that way, it is his final form, it is his final gear. However, I think Gear 5th, and now with Conqueror's coding being brought into the picture, Luffy's still going to have a lot to learn in utilizing both of them to the point to where he can not only just control and maintain 100% versatility here, utilizing both Conqueror's Haki and Gear 5th down the line as he continues to gain more battle experience. But also, because his ability is based on his imagination, I don't even know if this is the way it's going to look like when everything ends, right? Knowing how the gears have continued to evolve as Luffy's imagination has evolved, that could mean that Gear 5th itself could look different by the time all of this ends. The stuff that Gear 5th is doing primarily could be changed around by the time Luffy's imagination continues to grow and the more things that he sees. Because let's just say we go to Elbaf, he's so fascinated taken in by the giants that he makes Gear 5th during that arc a giant form, like in Gear 3rd. And so it all depends on the scenario at hand that is going to call for certain abilities to be used, and for Luffy's imagination to be used in one way or another. And in that way, it's not. Because Luffy's final form here is going to be different than the one he's going to use in Elbaf. The one he's going to use against Blackbeard is probably going to be different because he's probably going to use all of the battle experience he's accumulated through all these years in that battle against Blackbeard, but he will be in Gear 5th. So we're going to see his imagination to its fullest extent, but also utilizing techniques that are specific to that battle. Same thing if he fights against Instant Messenger-sama or Akainu or whoever it is. He's going to have specific potential forms and or moves to use against those characters. And in that way, this isn't his final form. But I do believe, like I said, or at least this isn't his peak, but I do believe that Gear 5th, like there will be nothing higher than Gear 5th. Now Luffy needs to work on Gear 5th as a form, what the repercussions that Gear 5th is going to have, which we still don't know what the repercussions are, and Conqueror's Haki, and connecting those two together, right? So I feel like from now on, when he enters Gear 5th, like I said, we could potentially see it look different every time that he goes from here on out, which is going to give it a new layer of interest every time he brings it out, because it's always going to be epic when you hear the drums liberation, right? But in that regard, it's like it is, his final form, but it's not necessarily his peak, because it's his peak up until this point. But the more battle experience he accumulates, the more islands he visits, the more people he sees, the more abilities he sees, the more things he finds interesting, Luffy's gonna be able to apply all that to his moveset. And so by the time we get to the end of the series with a move, with a transformation like Gear 5th, which allows him to use his imagination with no boundaries, that's whenever we're gonna see peak form Luffy. And what's gonna be so awesome is when he controls the repercussions, Luffy can 1v1 anyone in the series from here on out. In this form, he can 1v1 anyone. And I think that's going to be really interesting, considering that up until this point, we have had him in so many battles that have continuously been 2v1s, 3v1s, boss battles, and all that stuff. But I feel like from here on out, it's going to be peak 1v1 form Luffy. And a massive shout out to Polo over on the Distraught podcast for talking about this possibility, because I love it a lot. I love the fact that Luffy vs. Kaido will be the last time, quote unquote, that he will be in a boss battle-like situation. It feels like from now on, unless, granted there's like a massive war going on and it's not just 1v1s, right? But in terms of just 1v1 battles, from here on out, thanks to Gear 5th, thanks to combining with Conqueror's coding, go with the code Big Emperor Luffy's gonna need no help. This is 1v1 season. You know what I'm saying? And so it's gonna be super, super golden seeing that. And to me, that's going to be peak form Luffy, because thanks to Gear 5th, now he can utilize everything that he's ever thought was interesting within battle in his own way. And so that to me is going to be peak final form Luffy. But in regards to this being the final gear, in regards to this being the beginning of his final state, 100%. I don't think we'll get anything higher. If we get a Gear 6, that would be crazy. But for now, I do, because like I said, Gear 5th represents the series itself and what makes the Gomu Gomu no Mi, the Hito Hito no Mi Marunika, so special to Luffy. Whereas Luffy makes the fruit special. It's not the fruit itself that's special. It's that Luffy makes the fruit special. And not just anyone can use this thing, right? You need someone with an imagination so grand that they can make this thing work. And so with that being said, it represents it so well that to me it has to be the peak. It has to be the absolute final form for Luffy. But in that regard, he still has much to learn with this form, with how to use it, more experiences to come, that at the end of the series, we will see Gear 5th being used to the highest extent. And that will be peak pinnacle form Luffy. But this, for right now, without question, is peak form Go with the Coat. And I cannot wait to see what he does against Kaido, because at this point, with the whole Toon World thing going on and the Luffy tunes and all that, like, I just can't wait to see how he battles with all of this, right? And we're gonna see not just Luffy's, but of course Oda's, through Luffy, his imagination on full display in this upcoming battle. And that by itself is gonna add a new layer that's gonna make Luffy vs. Kaido even more grand than it already is. So let me know what y'all think about this conversation, about this discussion, about this being Luffy's final form. Do you also believe this is Luffy's final gear, that this will be the pinnacle of his, not necessarily his strength, but of his transformations, to where now from here on out he just needs to focus on mastering what his arsenal is now, and then we'll see when he's mastered all of this what true peak form Luffy is? Or do you have any other ideas on that matter? But until next time, I will see y'all. Have an awesome day. This chapter has had us recording like 10 different afterthoughts on multiple different channels, man. I can't stop talking about it because that's just how good it was. I'll see y'all next time. Have an awesome day. One Piece greatness. Gear 5th, baby.